In 2024, it was a good year to be living in Maitland, with the Maitland Mustangs NBL1 East men taking out the championship finally in their third grand final. Meanwhile, for the women, it was a slow and sluggish season, finishing 5-15. Can they turn around this season? We'll find out in Two Feet in the Paint's season preview. A side we've talked about a lot over the last few years, but especially last season. Of course, we've talked about the championship in the introduction, and there's been a lot of changes, let's just say that, in the off-season. Up in the Hunter region, let's start with one of the biggest ones. Mandrell Worthy has taken his talents from Crow's Nest all the way up to the Maitland Mustangs. Mandrell Worthy did it all for the Bears last year, was by far their best player. It got him a spot in the All-Star 5, and he's so dynamic. I mean, Gary and I in the commentary were always in awe of not just his shooting, but his percentages as well. He shot 50% to average 24 points per game. He's great off playing off 2 feet. Those jump shots are almost unstoppable, but hyper athletic too, so he can get up and get out in the fast break. An unselfish player who does it efficiently. So Mandrell Worthy, a huge signing for the Maitland Mustangs, a real good get to fill in the void that two players have left. We'll just talk about them real quickly. Will Cranston, Lown, and Matt Gray moving on. Of course, Will Cranston, congratulations, heading down to the Hobart Chargers. Great to see Will Cranston getting that bag. I mean, hasn't got an NBL contract, so great to see him getting paid, I'm assuming, a fair bit to play down in Tasmania. Meanwhile, Matty Gray moving down to the border. Assume the Bandits threw a fair bit of money at him as well, but he's worth it. Matt Gray's been a standout performer since the start of NBL1 East and even before that. So good to see both those players getting a new opportunity, but sad for the Maitland Mustangs. A player who is returning though from their championship team is Christian Little. Nothing little about his game, as Garen would always say, was really the glue that brought the Maitland Mustangs team together. It was really that X factor that helped them to win the championship last season. A very good defensive guard. I think that's an underrated part of his game and was an underrated part of that championship team. A great on-board defender, is very, very strong, and can force turnovers, and really would take the toughest assignment night in, night out. And offensively as well, didn't take anything away from his game there. That was very handy. Christian Little, good out of the pick and roll situation, and could really get to the basket using that physical body I was talking about just before. So Chris Little is back. You've got Chris Little at the 2 or Mandrell at the 3. Might see Chris Little slide into the point guard position a little more. I assume Jack Edwards is coming back, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him running the point as well, but good to have that option to have Chris Little maybe taking charge of this team, at least from a playmaking point of view. With those two huge players out, Billy Parsons is set to have one of his biggest seasons yet. We've always had huge raps on Billy Parsons, the 2-time Youth League MVP. Struggled with injuries towards the end of last season, which is quite sad to see, had a full-on ACL injury. But before that, he was balling out, averaging 14 points, 8 rebounds. And the stat that I found today, which I thought was quite interesting, is in his 3 seasons in NBL1, he's played 20 plus games every season and averaged 50% shooting, like 50% or more. So Billy Parsons isn't just one of those players who is quite effective at scoring. He also does it efficiently, and I think that's maybe a part of his game that can be overlooked. Of course, can really get downhill and get around the basket, get those high percentage shots in and around the ring. But also, in the last 2 years, has really shown his range, especially in the finals time as well. We saw that 2 years ago. Nailed a few 3-pointers at Sydney Uni, which almost got the Mustangs back in the game, but just fell short to the Sharkies. But Billy Parsons is a player who I think is going to be the secondary or primary scorer alongside Mandrell Worthy. You think he's going to definitely take that 4 spot, because he can do the rebounding. He's strong enough to defend at that position, but he's also versatile enough to switch into the 3 spot. So a lot of good pieces there, versatility-wise, for the Maitland Mustangs. Moving on to the women's side, they have secured their biggest player to come back. It's Shak Reilly. Shak Reilly, of course, coming off a solid season for the Maitland Mustangs. Of course, the results weren't quite there for the women's side last year, but Shak Reilly had some games where she looked completely unstoppable. That quick action jump shot, she can get it off in a hurry from mid-range, and especially from the 3-point line. We saw a game against the COE where she was just unstoppable. So to have Shak Reilly as, you would say, your primary scorer for the Maitland Mustangs is really important. It's also what she does off the court as well. We know Shak Reilly helps to run the training and development squads. She's very much the team captain and brings everyone together. So Shak Reilly, definitely a great player to have around, not just on the court, but in your organisation as well. And yeah, a good centrepiece to build that women's team around. And someone who is part of the Maitland royalty, it's Mila Wawszkowicz, coming back after spending a bit of time in NCAA with San Diego. She's back and committing to NBL1 with the Maitland Mustangs, and we couldn't be happier with it. Before she went over to college, she was showing glimpses of absolute stardom. A great versatile shooter and really quick, really quick. So can beat a defender off the dribble and get to the basket with ease, Mila Wawszkowicz. And you think after spending a bit of time in college, she's going to have that extra confidence training in that elite program and those elite systems over there in the US. And I think Mila Wawszkowicz could be a 15 to 20 point per game player for the Maitland Mustangs. So Shak Reilly and Mila as your 2 and your 3, that's a really good start in terms of building this Maitland Mustangs team back up to a team that can make the finals. A player who we're really happy to see come back for a 3rd season with the Maitland Mustangs is Sydney Hunter. Again, that San Diego connection they were talking about on Eastcote game, but it's very strong up there in Maitland. But Sid Hunter's definitely made a home up in the Hunter region. Word on the street is she's found a very solid job up there and is loving life. And who wouldn't in beautiful Maitland? Sid Hunter has been a consistent performer for the Maitland Mustangs, really their best big over the last few years, and I think things would have looked a lot worse without her in the side because they haven't had a whole lot of depth at that big position. So Sid Hunter does a lot of work defensively and offensively, but not just in the paint as well, can pop out for those mid-range shots, and that 3-point shot is starting to become quite automatic. So Sid Hunter's definitely someone you're going to have to guard all over the court. And it's great to see imports hanging around for more than 1 season, not just 2, but 3 in the case of Sid Hunter. Well, speaking of imports, Casey Neubert. We've got a new import coming in to join the women's program up in Maitland. So from what we can see with Casey, she's a big, so might partner up with Sid Hunter. Not too sure if they did play together at San Diego, but she's also from San Diego as well. So has that college experience and has a very solid resume. Averaged 9 points and 8 rebounds in her senior season. Had some great stretches there. In some tournaments, was averaging 16 rebounds a game. And it's really what the Maitland Mustangs are looking for. They're looking for a big at the moment. They need someone to pair up with Sydney Hunter. They had Maddie Washington a couple years ago, and that worked pretty well. That got them to the playoffs at least. So to have Neubert and Hunter in your front court, I think is a huge step in the right direction for this side because you can see the guards, there's a lot of depth and a lot of talent there at the moment. So filling in that front court, really important. Moving back to the front court for the men, one of our favourite players and someone we've been watching for a while now, J. Cole. He's returning to the Maitland Mustangs. It's not a huge surprise, but he had a massive season last year in Youth League, was the Youth League MVP. So how about that? The last 3 Youth League men's MVPs are sitting up for the Maitland Mustangs this season. J. Cole, an absolute force in the paint. Once he gets a steal, he's just got a plethora of moves to finish off, and if not, he'll just bully his way to the basket. Got a good little jump hook as well, which I think is quite underrated, and can also attack off the dribble from inside the arc. So for J. Cole, using that physicality to get to the basket and get some high percentage shots. He shot 60% last season, so was not wasting shots and was not taking bad shots in and around the ring. Of course, was a champion with that youth league side last season, and was really the leader of that team. So I think between him and James Hunter, who we will get to next, they've got great depth in that front court, and you think J. Cole with Matt Gray moving on is bound for a lot more minutes this season. Well, we're talking about James Hunter. Let's get into the Junt Daddy, one of our favourites here on 2 Feet into Paint. In fact, we need to issue a formal apology to James Hunter. I did interview him up in the beautiful Sunshine Coast, but the audio cut out. The audio didn't work, so it's been a long season, and I forgot to get the microphone plugged in fully, so it was all just static. So sorry, James Hunter. We will make up for it and get an interview with you later in the season, either at the Bear Cave or Penrith or with Spiders. But for James Hunter, he's such a reliable player to have. Some of the games you saw last season, even in the national finals, he was arguably man of the match. Not going to be a player who's selfish and demands a lot of shots, but when your offense is in a bit of a rut, you can just throw it to James Hunter and he'll be good to go. Give it to him in the post, he'll make a good move and get that high percentage shot. And his veteran experience, I think, really is underrated for this Maitland Mustangs team. Really brings the team together and gets it done rebounding and defensively as well. So big man 101, James Hunter is a real clinical performer, and great to see him back in the red and black. Got two more players from the men's side who are returning. We've got Luka Vea as well, another one of those great young players coming through the Maitland Mustangs system, originally from New Zealand, but really found a home with the Maitland Mustangs. Part of the championship team last season, a very athletic player and an elite defender. So Luka Vea, I think one of those players you can really chuck out there and can defend 3 through to 5. A real jack of all trades, good to bring off the bench, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him starting a few games this season. Luka Vea, good to have him back. It's also great to have Dan the Man Milburn back. It's not Maitland basketball without Dan Milburn. Of course, a Maitland junior through and through. He bleeds red and black. He's also a very proficient shooter. An underrated part of the championship side last season, Dan Milburn had some games where he'd pop off for 15 and 20 and saved it for the Mustangs. So whether it's coming off the bench or starting, Dan Milburn is a lethal option and a great scorer for the Mustangs to have in their arsenal, especially with a bit of the scoring punch leaving with Will Cranston moving on. It's good to have a guy like Dan Milburn out there who can really space the floor for his slashes like Christian Little and Mandrell Worthy, but won't take up too many shots, which is great because Dan Milburn's all about winning. And finally, two veterans are returning for the Maitland Mustangs women's side. I mean, you can almost assume they're coming back for the year. Two long-term Mustangs. It is Hannah Fox and Rachel Williams. A very unselfish player. Someone who will get you a lot of points if you need her to, but if not, won't make the ball stick in her hands, will pass it on. And she scores in a very efficient way. A lot of cuts off the ball, running the fast break, those freebies, but also has great footwork in the paint with those step-through scoop shots that we've come accustomed to. Really a great teammate to have because she also spaced the floor out with her three-point shooting. So Rachel Williams, good option on offense, but not someone who demands the ball. And I think we'll balance out with Mila and Shak quite well this season. Those three have great chemistry to chuck in with Sid Hunter as well. So I think with Maitland, one thing that really will help their women's side this season is that chemistry. They've had the same playing call for about 3 years now, give or take, a few players in, a few players out, but you think they're well balanced on the floor out there. And to round off the women's team, bring it all together, Japanese star import Natsumi Kohama is coming back again for a second season with the Maitland Mustangs, and the crafty point guard really impressed last season with the women's side. One of those players who is very patient on ball, whether it's playmaking or looking to set up her own shot or set up a teammate. Natsumi Kohama really brought the team together. They didn't really have a point guard last season. Shak Reilly did a lot of the ball handling responsibilities, but actually works quite well because Natsumi Kohama can play off ball, set up, spot up and shoot. If not, she'll move the ball around and bring the team together quite well. So great to have that starting 5 locked up. You've got to think it'll be Kohama, Wawszkowicz at the 2, Reilly at the 3, and then at your front court, Neubert and Hunter. There's still a lot of flexibility to bring Rachel Williams into the starting lineup as well. So that's Kohama, the latest signing for the Maitland Mustangs, but really brings the squad together. And the last signing we've had announced from the Maitland Mustangs is a Maitland legend through and through, coming back for his 20th senior season with the Maitland Mustangs. Josh Clifford, a legendary Maitland Mustang, a legend around the whole Hunter region. I mean, he's been playing for Maitland since probably longer than I've been alive. So Josh Clifford, another one of those players who's like having an extra coach out there on the floor. Of course, he was the captain of the Maitland Mustangs championship winning team, and brings so much more than just a good play style and, you know, a couple of buckets here and there. He's also a great leader and really helps Luke Boyle out a lot, being that kind of on-court presence. And of course, Josh Clifford would often say to us before and after games that he feels old, his back hurts, his knees are aching, but, you know, his heart's bigger than all those issues. So great to see Josh Clifford coming back for another season with the Maitland Mustangs.